Hello and welcome to another episode of the Money Matters podcast. My name is PJ Patterson, and today's topic is green and ESG investing. Over the last few months, I've had a number of clients asking me about green investing and ESG investing as well. So first of all, let's just define what those two things actually are. So green investing would be investing for, I suppose, planet Earth, investing in things like solar power, wind, battery power, electric vehicles, lithium, perhaps. Anything that nuclear is another one. Anything that is perceived by an investor to be good for the planet, reducing mainly, I think it's in the reduction of CO2 and in maybe the reduction of harmful pollutants and things that go out into the atmosphere. So that's kind of generally green investing, and that's a broad definition. So if you don't agree with that, that's fine, but that's a very broad and general definition. ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, and ESG investing really has to do with companies are now rated on, and they're given an ESG score. They're rated in each of those areas, how they are on the environment, how they are in the social paradigm, and then also how they are in terms of corporate governance. And some people like to invest in companies that have very high ESG ratings, and some people want to stay away from those. And so broadly, I think people are more concerned about the climate change issue and investing in companies that are purported to be good for the environment. Probably a little bit less on the ESG, but that is becoming much more of a thing these days. And I think my take on it is this. It's become kind of fashionable to say to people, well, I'm a green investor, or I invest in companies that don't harm the environment, or it could even go as far as saying I don't invest in industries like gambling or tobacco or arms, weapons, that type of thing, or big oil, or any of those sorts of areas where there's a perception that it's harmful somehow to the planet, and either through harming other people directly. Weapons manufacture would be a great example of that, or indirectly. For example, say you wanted to stay away from a coal mine because you knew that the coal was going to be burned, and as such adding to the CO2 in the atmosphere. My take on all this is I'm pretty agnostic about the asset classes that I invest in. So as I said a moment ago, I used the word fashionable. I think it's become a little bit fashionable for people to say that they're investing in this way, or that their portfolios don't have this stuff in it. My first challenge on that would be to say, actually, it's very hard to know in the modern portfolio, unless you have chosen every single stock that's in your portfolio, and let's face it, that's unlikely for most people, then it's likely that some of that stuff is in there. Not a lot of it, I'm sure, but because a lot of fund managers now are getting on that bandwagon as well. The second thing I would challenge people on is the reality that, unfortunately, we do live in an oil and coal-based economy. And the reason for that, of course, it has to do with our cars and how we power our homes. In most parts of the world, we cannot move from point A to point B without either putting petroleum, some form of petroleum product, in a vehicle, whether it be even a bus that's running down the road, or natural gas that goes into, natural gas obviously isn't petroleum, but natural gas would be a fossil fuel, into a bus, or into our cars. And coal is used primarily in power production. So if we flip on the light switch in our home, it's because we have electricity that's generated, generally speaking, by coal. Now, nuclear is also in the mix here, in that I think that's one of the greenest energies around, funnily enough. A lot of people don't like nuclear for some reason, but it's actually one of the safest and lowest emission form of power production, electricity generation. But again, the reality is our global economy is based on oil. That is not going to go away anytime soon, regardless of how many battery farms or wind farms or solar farms we put in place. We just don't have the capability right now, the technology, to replace the oil and coal-based economy. Now, we could have a debate about all of that. I'm sure there are some people out there who feel that we could do that, and I think it's an admirable thing for us to strive towards, is having a planet where we don't have to burn fossil fuels to generate power. I don't see that happening in my lifetime. I'm 51 at the moment. Well, I will be 51 in 9 days. At the time I'm recording this, it's June the 1st of 2022. And I can't see that happening in my lifetime. Now, maybe in my children's lifetime, that is quite possible, but it's going to require a lot of technological advancement. So that's another reason I suppose people might want to be investing in green technologies, or the perception that they're investing in green technologies, because as more capital flows into those industries, it means that they're able to continue research and development and ultimately hopefully having a breakthrough of some sort where we can have a lot of power generation from something like even a fusion technology or hydrogen or whatever. But I want to talk probably about more specifically now about, as myself as a portfolio manager, one of the reasons why I wouldn't, and I've had this conversation with a client, where I wouldn't try to invest solely and specifically in this type of asset sector. And the reason for that is because a lot of these companies right now, because it's become so fashionable in recent years, a lot of these companies are still in startup phase and in the real capital intensive phase of their businesses. So they're still building out infrastructure. They're still trying to get a business model that actually returns profits. And let's face it, that's why we invest. We do invest for a return on our investment at some point. And a lot of these companies, sadly, in this day and age, are not going to survive because they don't have good business models. They're subsidized by the government, which means that they're heavily reliant for their survival on the government giving them some form of subsidy. A lot of them don't make money. Not every one of them, of course, but many of these companies don't make money. And lastly, all companies are subject to the full investing cycle or the business cycle. And right now, as you know, I use the model that Hedgeye uses, the quadrant model, the 4 quads. Quads 1 and 2 being good, 3 and 4 being not so good, and we are in a global quad 4. And typically in a global quad 4, in a quad 4 environment, small cap equities don't do very well. Equities in general don't do very well, and certainly companies like solar or wind or any of these sorts of companies, unless they have proven and stable revenue streams where they might be paying some sort of dividend, then it's unlikely that they're going to do very well in that environment. And so when I get asked the question by a client, can we invest part of our portfolio in green energy or green tech or any of that sort of stuff, the first thing I will do is I will look at where are we in the full cycle. And if we are in a quad 1 or quad 2 environment, then the answer will invariably be yes, we can have a look at that. There's some great ETFs out there that invest in green energies and alternatives and planet-saving tech that you can invest in that will, I dare say, do reasonably well during a quad 1 or quad 2 environment. But if we're in a quad 3 or quad 4 environment, as we are now, a quad 4, I would be saying absolutely not. And the reason is you just, again, can't really invest in equities in that sort of environment where the market is experiencing a downturn, earnings are falling, etc. The thing I say to them to do instead, which I think is how we should approach green investing, it is that we have ultimately the capacity to influence what we do in our immediate environment. So I'm talking about your home, your neighbors, friends in your network, your community. And I'll just share with you some of the things that I've done, because I believe that we have to look after the planet. There's no doubt about that. But it starts with myself, me, as an individual taking responsibility for that, influencing my family, and then hopefully influencing people around me. So a couple of things that I do, and if you're doing these, fantastic. If you're not, then give it some thought. Hopefully you have the capability to do this. I put solar panels on my roof. about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. It doesn't generate a heap of power, and we do get some input credits for that. But again, it is a small part in helping reduce our energy consumption at the home level. And hopefully I'll be able to expand that or upgrade as solar panels get more efficient and upgrade what I've got. The second thing, of course, you can do that I do is try to conserve energy at home. So taking shorter showers. You've heard all these things before. Take shorter showers. Put LED bulbs in all your lights around the house. Turn lights off if you're leaving a room. These sorts of things. Every little bit, I think every small percent incremental change that I make in my behavior and my family's behavior ultimately adds up to a big difference overall. Things like composting, and we have a garden at home. So I started a garden. We do grow some food. It's not great for growing food. It's very hard to get the time to do that. Having said that, we do compost all of our organic matter at home. So I have a couple of compost bins, and we make sure that we don't want to put those compostable materials into the landfill, and would instead I compost them, get the worms going, have some very nice soils for our garden, etc. Driving less is another big one. So making fewer trips or carpooling where possible. Now, I've had the capability of having an office that is close to my home, so I don't have to travel for work very far, which is great. I get that not everyone can do that, but in this day and age now, post-COVID, of course, there's a lot of work from home arrangements, things like that. So there's a number of things that you can do to impact the planet and be a green investor without running the risk of investing in companies that are not going to perform over the long term and potentially destroy your wealth. Anyway, I hope that's been insightful. I hope you've got some ideas out of that. Again, this is the Money Matters podcast. Thank you for joining me. My name is PJ Patterson, and I'll see you on the next episode.